Hi, I'm Michael Watt, Capital Markets Editor of The Banker and Africa Editor of The Banker as well. I'm here at the African Development Bank Conference in Abidjan, Ivory Coast with Florian Witt, who's the Africa head for Commerzbank. Florian, thanks very much for speaking to me. The event's obviously of significant importance to the region itself. Why is a European bank like Commerzbank getting involved?
Yeah, Michael, it's relatively simple because we are doing a lot of business in Africa, especially with the financial institutions, with the banks. We have approximately 400 banks being our clients in Africa. And the African Development Bank meeting is as such a meeting of the African Development Bank, but also a gathering of the financial institutions from Africa and also our peers and competitors from the other parts of the world. So it's an important gathering. And we are usually here every year, but this year is a particular one because we are in Abidjan in Ivory Coast, 50 years, African Development Bank. And as we have learned, many people attended, and African Development Bank is setting a new landmark for the conferencing of and gathering of financiers worldwide for Africa.
So, when you arrive here, what are the things that you have been most focused on while you've been here? What are the sessions? What are the issues that you have picked up on and been most interested in?
Well, first of all, our objective is always to look how finance for Africa can be improved through a catalyst of the local financial institutions. Today we had our collaborative panel together with African Development Bank on trade finance in Africa. Trade finance is considered the bread and butter business, but is definitely the most important part of day-to-day financing for this continent. And that is one of the main topics we are pursuing here. Apart from that, it's about creating a deeper syndicated loan market for larger scale transactions, for project finance, and also to look what other possibilities in the capital markets are available, and to try to develop with our partners, with our competitors in joint collaboration, the avenue for a more fructuous and more juicy capital market business for Africa, particularly to ensure that the access for African borrowers is much better developed and will be improved in due course.
What kind of appetite is there at the moment, both outside Africa and within it, for African capital markets, African investment? I mean, you talk about boosting capital markets in Africa. Obviously, they are quite undeveloped when compared with other regions in the world. Is there much appetite from large-scale investors to enter the continent and to increase the scale of those markets?
Well, there are two angles. The first angle is the local capital markets in Africa. We see a lot of good developments. I think the Nigerian Stock Exchange has done a lot to improve their quality, and you can see it in a quite active trading activity and portfolio investors inflow. Similar situation is in Casablanca at the stock exchange. We are seeing even here in Abidjan with the BVRM a market that is now also developing quite well. On the East African side in Nairobi, I think the stock exchange is also good. Not speaking of Johannesburg, which is definitely a well-established location. So we see portfolio investors going into the local markets. Then there is a lot of capital that is mobilized out of Africa itself through the pension funds. For instance, in Nigeria, we have very active and lively pension funds with large scale of funds. They put into the capital markets in Africa, into the local bond markets, as well as into the equity markets. Then there's the external market, where the countries issue Eurobonds, or banks and countries go to the debt capital markets by syndicating a loan, where we have seen the last 2 years a lot of activity in the Eurobond part, more on the sovereign end, and in the syndicated loan market more on the financial institution end. So last year we had a dozen of syndicated loan transactions, of which ourselves we participated in 10 on a senior role. So you can see there's quite an active and lively development. It is now very important that this momentum is being kept. If we keep that momentum for another 2 or 3 years, Africa will be a full-fledged asset class in the capital markets worldwide.
You mentioned the Eurobond issuance, which is obviously of huge importance to a lot of African countries where the demand for local currency isn't high and the liquidity for local currency isn't high. Is there a danger that continued issuance in Eurobonds stymies the development of a local currency capital market? I mean, if a lot of the issuance is in dollars, then the local currency, the benchmarks are set for local currency issuance, and the appetite isn't there. I mean, how do African countries manage the transition from Eurobond issuance to local currency issuance?
Well, at the end of the day, it's a question of the right mix, and I think it is for each country. It will be its particular mix. As per our opinion, this mix is quite well balanced in Nigeria at the moment, and it serves as a good benchmark. Of course, the sovereigns should look what they can mobilize locally, because then they do not carry the foreign exchange risk, and that must be developed. I think some countries, as I said, Nigeria has done a great deal over the last years, so the mix is good. Some other countries, I think they have to be prudent about what they are doing at the moment. We do not recommend to tap too often the international capital markets. It must be wisely done, even though the rates might look low at the moment, but if you have a new environment in the global capital markets, things might change very quickly for the issuers. So we say it's a question of mix, and it needs a good and robust advice by the different stakeholders, from IMF to the commercial banks, and that can serve together with rating agencies and so on and so forth.
Florian Witt from Commerzbank, thanks very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.